Welcome again to Deck Building with Bahumaut. Today we're going to be looking at the Convergence ability, and some of you may already know this ability, as in what it does is it will give an advantageous effect depending on the amount and type of mana you tap to pay for it. So this can be things like increasing the strength of a card, the strength of an effect, or any other type of combination of abilities. Alright, so we'll begin with our green creatures, because this is where most of the Converge cards can be found. And you'll see the first one we reach when we eventually get there. There we go. Tajuru Stalwart, I presume. Okay, you can see the Converge effect there. Now it only has a cost of 3 total, but it can become up to a 3/4 for only 3 mana, which is quite a nice combination. So, and you'll also notice that it's an ally as well, which is going to combine well with a lot of the effects that that are planned for this deck. So definitely consider putting a couple or more in there. Another option for Converge, we have Woodland Wanderer. Now, it can actually become more powerful than most other Converge creatures, so it can become up to a 6/6 with Trample and Vigilance. But for this deck, we're going to leave it out because it's not actually an ally and won't trigger a number of ally effects. So, could be considered for Converge decks that don't use an ally base, but we'll stick with just all allies for our creatures. Moving on to white. Now, we're going to use an ally base for the core of our deck, as well as our Converge abilities. So, we have our important duo of allies, which is Lantern Scout, and our hero of something or other. Where the hell is he? Yeah, Hero of Goma Fada, which provides indestructible to all creatures whenever you play an ally. So combining those two together, so giving all creatures lifelink and all creatures indestructible, is a nice combination. So those two will be the core of our deck. Moving on to black. Now, another thing with this deck is there's a lot of ally creature effects that deal with life effects, and they tend to be black allies. So one of the best ones of these, especially when combined with other ally abilities, is Kalastria Healer. Now, this effect, each opponent. Now, keep in mind that's each opponent. So when you're in Two-Headed Giant, that's a total of 2 damage, and you gain 1 life for every ally you play, which makes it a particularly valuable card to have in play. Also, it's a vampire in addition to an ally, and we'll get to why that's important shortly. So we'll chuck all 4 of those in there because they're very handy to have. Okay, looking at this so far, you can tell we're a bit lacking in flying defense, and a perfect help for that is Vampire Envoy. Now, not only is it a 1/4 flyer, it's also gives you health whenever you tap it, and once again, it's a vampire and an ally. So, as I said before, we'll get to why vampire is important, because it's going to mesh well with something we come across later. So definitely put 2 or 3 of them in there to bolster our flying defenses. In conjunction with Kalastria Healer, which is whenever you play an ally, each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. In conjunction with this, putting in Cliffhaven Vampire is an extremely nasty combination, because every time you're gaining life, you're dealing an additional 1 damage to the 2 you're already dealing with every one of these, especially if you gain life from multiple sources. So the Cliffhaven Vampire is also a very nice flying defense, and is also an ally and a vampire once again. Now, we'll get on to why vampires are important in a deck like this. So they're all still allies, which means that basically every creature we have in this deck is going to be an ally. But only about half of them are vampires. But we'll see why that added effect also helps. Because so many of the creatures in this deck are also vampires, we can put in Stensia Masquerade. Attacking creatures you control have first strike. Even that just by itself is nice. But keep in mind a large chunk of the creatures in this deck are vampires, and you see the secondary ability is whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage, put a 1/1 counter on it, so that's a permanent +1/+1 to any vampire. Yes. Slight correction there. Deals combat damage to a player, not just combat damage. Also, it has Madness ability, so if you're forced to discard it, you can still pay the Madness cost to save it and put it on the battlefield. Plus, this triggering Madness can also count as an instant. So if you play a spell that makes you discard a card, you can actually pay the Madness cost and put it on the field during an attack, for example, which can be the difference between a win and a loss in that particular battle. So it can be a very handy ability if used correctly. Jumping back again to white. Now some of you might think, oh, well, obviously we should just chuck in Always Watching. Well, see, with a convergence deck, so when you're dealing with so many different mana colors, you try and avoid ones that require multiple of the same color. So, as in this case, we have 2 white mana required, plus a colorless mana. Now, often it'll be the case where you can get 1 mana relatively safely, but getting 2 of the same type can really be a trial in pushing your luck. So, even though it is such a good ability, such a good enchantment, we'll leave Always Watching to the side and instead go for Nahiri's Machinations. Now, you can obviously see this automatically has some synergy with Sigil of Valor, because if you're only attacking with a single creature, it gives a large amount of a potential for a large increase in attack and toughness by giving it indestructible until end of turn. Since we will have red in this deck, you can use Nahiri's Machinations, secondary ability, to deal some extra damage if you need to deal that last little bit of finishing damage. We'll also want to be looking at our kill capability, and one of the most useful things for that is Declaration in Stone, especially when you're against a player who uses multiple of the same type of creature. So it's creatures with the same name, I should say. And especially since it also exiles that creature. Now it does give your opponent a investigation artifact for each creature removed that way, which can be a negative, but the general effectiveness of it can't be understated. It is extremely useful. For another synergy effect, looking at Kalastria Healer, yes, I know you can see that there's multiple effects all relying on the one card type, but it is a very useful card. Now, whenever an ally enters, trigger that effect. Fair enough. But with our convergence deck, we can put up to 4 ally tokens on the field at once. Now, for every one of these we have on the field at the same time, that's 4 damage. Or, sorry, if you're playing Two-Headed Giant, that's 8 damage. So you have a potential for 4 or 8 damage, as well as 4 life gain for each one of these creatures you have on the field at the same time. And since there's 4 in the deck, that's a butt ton of damage. So definitely put 1 or 2 in there. Moving on to our mixed colors. Well, once again, we have Veteran Warleader. And because we have a large number of creatures in this deck, it's worth considering exactly how powerful this guy will become, especially with his secondary ability, which is tapping another untapped ally and gaining the choice of First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample until end of turn. So if you have a lot of allies in play, you can give him all three if you want, especially with some of the allies not being as aggressive as others, such as Kalastria Healer. So you can freely tap him with no real loss to your attacking forces. So definitely a good card to put into the mix. Once again, we're back on topic with Convergence. And now, before you might think, oh, well, there's a couple of decent vampire flyers, that's not really going to stop any high-end flyers from getting through your forces. So to deal with that, and to also add a bit more color variety, we have Skyrider Elf. He has, while he starts off at 0/0, you're going to already be gaining +2/+2 minimum just to play him. And of course, any other mana type you can play from then on will increase him by +1/+1 each time. So you're starting off with a minimum 2/2 flyer for 2 to paying 5 mana of each different type to make him a flying 5/5. And he's also an ally as well, so contributes to all those ally effects that we were talking about earlier. And since all of our creatures are allies, that should automatically bring to your mind Stoneforge Masterwork, which powers up any creature by +1/+1 for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. So definitely chuck both of those in there. And we're starting to approach our card limit, so let's move on to lands and then finish off with our last few remaining picks. Now, because a Converge deck requires all mana types, you definitely want to include all Evolving Wilds, because this will give you the ability to actually search for the required lands that you need. Now, while you could do this with spells, such as the green spells that allow you to search your deck for any basic mana, this will allow you to not waste mana to search for mana, if I can put it that way. So even though it requires 4 extra cards in your deck, I think it comes out as worthwhile for the cost. Also, because of Evolving Wilds, it only has the ability to search for basic lands. So we have to make sure we don't fill the deck with ones that are non-basic lands, even if they have really good abilities such as Mortuary Mire, which allows you to return a creature from the graveyard to your to the top of your library. So only put a couple of Mortuary Mires in, even though the ability is very useful. Same with Fertile Thicket, which allows you to move a land from the top 5 cards of your library to the front of to the top of the library. And because of our combination of vampires and the Masquerade enchantment, which powers them up if they manage to get through, we should include a couple of Rogue's Passages, which allows us to make creatures unblockable. So if you're in a stalemate situation, this can be a lifesaver. And you might think, why don't we put in all the multi-land types? Now, that's true, they might be helpful, but the downside is they often require you to already control a basic land of that type. And now because you have such a variety of lands, you're not guaranteed to already have those types in play, which means they'll come into play tapped, unlike a basic land card. So it actually tends to be better to just take basic land cards in. Even though multi-type lands give you more options quicker, they can often only come into play tapped due to the limit of your initial basic lands. Now, our mana priorities are definitely plains, swamps, and forests in equal measure. That's right, Fertile Thicket. Then followed by islands and mountains. So let's see, we have 24. Okay, yeah, that'll do. We'll make it even across the board. It's 26, so that's fine. Okay, so as we can see, 4 plains, 4 islands, 2 swamps, 4 mountains, 2 forests, and we have our 2 specialty lands, Rogue's Passage and Evolving Wilds, which allows us to search for the required mana types. So we have a whole 3 cards left that we can put into our deck. So let's go searching, see what final cards we can hunt up. Okay, because a lot of our deck revolves around gaining life or lifelink, even though it's not actually a focused lifelink deck, it might be worthwhile for us to include Malakir Soothsayer. Now, you draw an extra card and you lose 1 life by tapping another ally, and it's a 4/4, which is fairly good. Now, losing 1 life isn't much of an issue to us, because a lot of our effects gain life. Plus, once again, it's a vampire and ally, so vampire has the potential to gain more counters by getting through the enemy's defense. And ally will trigger all the ally effects, so it gets the best of both worlds. So definitely a consideration to include. Nearly forgot about him. Now you can see that while we have a few converge effects, you probably don't really see how that gels with the allies that we're basing this deck off. Now here's the card that really ties everything together. So General Tazri, his initial ability is fairly handy because it allows you to search for your lifelink giver ally or your indestructible giver ally. But the main point of interest for us is the secondary ability there. Pay 1 of every mana type. All ally creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of colors among those creatures. So the more variety you have on the field, which means our multi-type creatures are great for this particular situation, then the more buffed up all of your creatures can become. And keep in mind that this doesn't actually require tapping. So you can trigger it mid-attack. All of your creatures can suddenly jump up in power quite dramatically, which can completely turn the tables for an attack. So he is essential for this particular deck. To wrap us up here, now, and to add another color to our potential creatures that are out, we have Munda, Ambush Leader, which 3/4 with haste for 4 mana isn't that impressive, but looking at his rally ability, he allows you to search the next 4 cards in your library, and from them, any ally creatures that are upcoming, you can move them to the top of your deck in whatever order you choose. So this allows you to keep a continual eye on what's coming up and pick the best order to have your creatures come into play. Now, it may not sound that great, but it really can make a difference when you're, especially in the early stages of a game, if all you had coming up were 3 lands and an ally that you actually want. And just the ability to rearrange the order can make a huge difference in play. Okay, well, that's our deck constructed. As you can see, it's largely creature based, but that's also because many of the creatures are triggering our spell effects. So we're not actually casting spells, but we're using their rally effects and cohort effects to trigger the same outcome as spells would. So that's why there's quite a low number of actual spells and enchantments in the deck. Spells, instants, and sorceries in the deck, I should say. So we'll move on to our stats. As you can see, the mana curve is fairly ordinary. So the majority of our cards fall in the 2 and 3 range, few in 4, and slightly fewer in 5, which is fair enough for our purposes. You can also see there that there's a large majority of white in comparison to the other colors. That is because a large number of allies are actually from the white color scheme, but also keep in mind that there are a lot of mixed colors in this. So there's a lot of white and black. Same with white and green. So there's some that stretch across multiple colors. So it isn't actually as representative as a normal single or dual color deck would be. Okay, so the deck's wrapped up. Now it's time to give it its test. Okay, from the stars you can see speed is quite good. It's about halfway along. Strength could take a little bit more tweaking, but I think we can push it up to 2 stars. Control is fairly good because of all the ally effects we have in there, and synergy is basically off the charts because everything is an ally and everything is interlinked with each other. Plus there are so many ally effects in there that it's counted them up and basically maxed out the scale. So as we can see, we've got a pretty good starting point for our initial deck design. Okay, here we are again. Onto the field of battle. Okay. So that restricts us a bit in our options if we take that. But we'll see if it'll pan out anyway. So we definitely need black first off. So make sure we pick that because we have 3 black cards in our hand. So as soon as we get that healer out quickly, that will start leeching our opponent. Get our next color type out and start draining health. Okay, moving on, we get a green, which could be well worthwhile if we get a white or a red out of it, which we do, which is very good. The best thing about this is we're unlikely to be mana flooded like on 2 previous occasions, as we have a decent amount of stuff in our hand that we can play. So this should give us white, which allows us to play Vampire Envoy and have a good blocker for the 2/2 Quilted Wolf, and of course continual drain of health. Okay, another more powerful creature once again. Now our only missing type is a mountain, so we may as well pick that up now. And that will give us all 5 types, which is good, especially at this early stage of the game. Now hopefully we stop drawing lands and start drawing some other stuff. Now, if at all possible, I'd like to draw another healer before casting Unified Front, so that it can deal 8 damage instead of 4. But that may not be possible, depends on how things pan out. Because it seems our opponent's deck is filled with a lot of wolf and transform creatures, so we need to continue playing cards every turn, otherwise they'll transform. Now we got our Hero of Goma Fada, so we get our indestructible effect, as long as it doesn't get picked off by a spell. But I don't think we'll actually attack this turn, we'll wait until we get some additional support. And of course, if our Hero of Goma Fada gets killed off, we have Mortuary Mire in hand to bring him back. Another land, so not much we can do about that. So I'm going to play United Front at this point with maximum colours, which will give us a heap of allies, triggering ally effects. Which gives us life and takes life from then. So let's gain some more life, deal a little bit more damage. Now of course they could attack in retaliation, but we can block them with our large amount of allies, so it's not really too much of a concern. Very creature heavy opponent deck, this one. I don't think I've seen them cast a single spell, instant or sorcery. No. It's just been creatures. So I have to make sure that I cast a spell every time, because otherwise they have multiple cards in play that will flip and transform. So I'm going to make use of my 4 damage creature to try and start chipping away at their large number of creatures on the field. Because the main threat is, of course, them building up so many creatures that they can overwhelm us. And because they have 2 first strikers, we won't be able to attack at this point. But now that we have Masquerade, our creatures are first strikers as well. And if they do get through, then they'll be powering up our flying vampires. But for now, we need to keep going with our 4-3 and slowly chip away at their creatures. Well, this isn't exactly the most exciting round I've ever seen. It is a tried and true strategy. So yep, 1 less creature they can block with. Of course, they keep using their 2-Who's abilities to keep searching for more creatures, just to draw this out even longer. So essentially we're nearly at the point of a stalemate. So I'd be seriously considering sneaking my flyers through. Now of course this time they'll be able, no. I might sneak one of my 1/4 flyers through using Rogue's Passage, which will then power him up enough to kill off any of the 2/2 first strikers that actually attack us. And then I can continually send through the other flyer and build him up enough that he can be used for just general blocking. So even though we're in a stalemate situation, this will at least allow us to build up. And I should probably use that. And pick another red, because we can use red in conjunction with our enchantment to deal additional damage. Okay. Right, they're going all out very quickly. So we definitely want to stop their creature regeneration. We want to prevent as much damage as we can. So block the 5/6. And I think that's about all we can prevent. So that'll have to do us. Finally. Okay. So here we finally have General Tazri. Who hopefully will lead us to glorious victory. Now, the only one we're missing at the moment is Lantern Scout to give us our life potential. And because our opponents attacked all out last turn, we pretty much have the board free of flyers. So we can power up our own flying forces. And of course, this continues to weaken our opponent. So that's one less powerful creature that could flip and transform, which is good for us. Because of all the life we stockpiled earlier, we're in a pretty good position here. Even if they attack all out, it's unlikely they'd be able to get through 26 health. And of course, as soon as we play Lantern Scout next turn, if they don't manage to get rid of our 4/3 creature that generates indestructible, we're pretty much in a set position to finish things off. Okay, the only downside of this will be that I only have one plane, so I won't be able to take advantage of General Tazri yet. But I will be able to play Stoneforge Masterwork. And I'll chuck it on our healer. So even if he sticks behind, because I'm not planning to attack with him, at least we'll have the ability to get rid of one of their powerful attackers. So continue to attack. Once again, they've attacked with a lot of their creatures, so hopefully this will get rid of some more. Okay. Now, so we have a 3/4 blocking a 3/4. We could take advantage of our red mana that we gathered earlier to deal an extra 1 damage to a blocker, which is just enough to finish him off. So, More creatures dead, more life for us. We're onto a win here, I think. Of course, if we had Cliffhaven Vampire on the field at this point, this would already have been a done deal, because gaining life from so many sources would deal a lot of damage back to our opponent. And here we have another Kalastria Healer. So we have all our mana types untapped, which is good for us. Our opponent only has 2 life left. We have indestructible creatures. We have lifelink on all creatures. We're ready to go. And of course, every time our vampires get through, they get more powerful. And also, because we have all mana types, we can trigger General Tazri's ability to buff up our creatures even further. So as you can see, with the combined effects of multiple inputs, you can end up with a very impressive army. And look at that life total. So yeah, this is one of the benefits of combined allies with other various effects. So yes, I'm pretty much sure we're just in the matter of wrapping it up now. But you've seen a good variety of what this deck can do. I mean, there's a few other little abilities, such as Ambush Leader, his ability to go through upcoming cards and check for the actual ones you want. But I think in general you've seen most of the effects of this deck, and we've wound up with a win. So I think that's a pretty good coverage of what this deck can actually do. So that was the Converge ability, supported by ally effects. And that's it for today. Deck building with Bahumaut, and I'll see you next time.